Hey guys, welcome to Sunday School Online here. We're doing the video for this week's Sunday School lesson. Hopefully you guys are having a good week. How is homeschool going? Hopefully everybody's having a great time, learning lots of stuff, getting lots of exercise on your own outside, running around. Hey guys, real quick, some notes for the parents. Online where you found this video, real nearby to that link, I don't know directionally where that link is going to be on the screen. But real close by on that screen is going to be the links for handouts for the course. So parents, if you want to pause the video, take a second, print those off. Feel free to do so. You can print those off and you can have the activity sheets available for your kids. This class is geared towards the 1st grade through the 4th grade. So those online materials will be set up next to the video somewhere on that screen. That being said, throughout this little short lesson, if you want to pause at any time and run through some of those questions that I'm posing to the kids, feel free to do that at any time. That's the benefit of having technology where you can pause, go through the questions, ask them those questions, get their feedback, let them have that family conversation back and forth. Then you can resume and play as normal. Or if you want to rewatch it, as they're asking questions, you can do that too. That's the benefit of having a format like this. Let's jump into it. Today's lesson is about fear. So let's talk a little bit about, kids, what do the words sadness, happy, angry, bitter, fear, what are those words usually associated with? If you said they're emotions, you'd be correct. Emotions they're part of what God gave us to navigate how our thought processes are, or how we process thoughts, how we process how we're feeling. But emotions can be really misleading as well. Today we want to talk about fear. I don't know if you guys are fully aware, and I don't know what conversations you guys had with mom and dad about what's going on around you, but when I was a kid, we had a class called Social Studies, and part of that Social Studies is we did current events, where we would read a newspaper article and we would start asking ourselves questions like, what's going on? Who does this involve? Who does this affect? What are some of the effects or ramifications of what's taking place? And we would kind of do a brief little synopsis or write-up or a little report on what is taking place with that little event. And sometimes they'd be really funny events like a concert or a comedy show. Other events would be more serious in nature. Currently, right now, we're in a spot where there's an event taking place where people are getting sick, and this is all over the world. Now, this is not to like scare you and say everybody's getting sick, but a lot of people are. And a lot of people are afraid. A lot of people are sad. A lot of people are dealing with a whole range of emotions. This story comes timely for us where we can learn about what Jesus has to say about how we deal with our fear. So again, parents, if you're listening, you can check in on those resources on that website or on the church website next to the video. They're going to have some handouts. But for today, we're going to go through and I'm going to read the story to you. And today's memory verse, I've got it up here on the board. It's also on those handouts that you can print off. But today's memory verse comes from Philippians 4-7, which says to us, present your requests, some versions say prayers, present your requests to God, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. There's a powerful thing that we oftentimes forget we have access to, and that is prayer to God. We can communicate with God, we can pray to God, and we can share our emotions, share our thought processes, share our struggles, our joys, our happiness, our sadnesses, our fears with God. And the Bible teaches us that when we present those things to God, when we present those prayers to God, the peace of God will guard our hearts and guard our minds in Christ Jesus, because we've given those things to Him. We've given the power of those emotions over to Jesus and over to God to help us navigate those. So without any further ado, let's get into our story. Today's story comes out of the book of Mark, chapter 4, starting in verse 35. So if you want to take a second, you can pause the video, turn to your passage, and parents, if you want to just read it yourselves to your kids, you can. I'm about to read it, but if you want to take a second and read it to them, you can, and then we will go through a discussion. Here's the reading. Mark 4, verse 35 and following. Now Jesus, a little bit of background real quick. Jesus just got done going through a series of parables with the disciples and with those around listening. He's talking about the parable of the sower, the purpose of parables. He's talking about a parable with the lamp under the basket, and a parable of the seed growing, parable of the mustard seed. So he's going through a series of parables. Mark, this specific author, this specific disciple, is going very rapid. He's not stopping and lingering on a whole lot of topics. He's going through parable after parable after parable, describing his experience with Jesus and what Jesus taught. At this point, Mark tells us that he just got done teaching a bunch of parables, and now he's with his disciples, just his disciples. Verse 35, on that day, when evening had come, he had said to them, his disciples, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him, and a great windstorm arose. And the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling with water. He was in the stern, asleep on a cushion, he being Jesus. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke, and he rebuked the wind and the sea, saying, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Great fear, or why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear, and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? So Jesus just gets done teaching some parables, and Mark fast forwards to this event right after those teachings. He's got his disciples, and Jesus tells them what? Jesus tells them, let's go across the lake, we're going to go to the other side. So he's got in them, Jesus is with the disciples in a boat. Jesus decides, it's time to take a nap. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm going to take a nap. Well, what happens during his nap and while they're on the boat? A storm comes. The wind is blowing, the wind is raging, the waters are rising, waves are crashing over the boat is filling with water. What do you think are some of the emotions that these disciples are going through? What do you think they're feeling? What do you think they're thinking that's taking place? Well, a little hint says right there when they try to wake up Jesus. It says, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? They think what? What do they think is going to happen? They think that they're possibly going to die. They're going to drown. This boat's going to capsize. The boat's going to sink. We're in trouble. They're afraid. And he awoke, and he rebuked the wind and the sea. And what did Jesus say to the wind and the sea? He said, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Let's back up just a second. What do you think the disciples wanted Jesus to actually do? What do you think they expected him to do? He's a teacher, he's a rabbi. They might not be at this point 100% sold that he was the Son of God yet. What do you think they expected him to do? What do you think they expected him to do to solve this problem for them? And Jesus does for them not only maybe what they kind of expected, but what they needed. At the time they needed it. And so in God's timing, at the time they needed it. But he also surprised them completely. I don't think they honestly expected him just to automatically say stop, and the wind would stop, or the waves would stop. I don't know what they expected Jesus to do. Maybe help grab another bucket and start shoveling water out of the boat so that they wouldn't sink. Maybe grab a line so that the sails weren't flapping in the wind. Maybe they needed some extra hands holding down equipment on the boat. Who knows? Maybe help throwing extra equipment off the boat, extra stuff they didn't need so they wouldn't sink. Who knows what the disciples really expected Jesus to do. But what he did what they needed and when they needed it, and then he taught them. Jesus said to the wind and rebuked the wind and the sea and said, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased and the waves stopped and there was a great calm. And he looked at them and he took this opportunity as a teaching opportunity. He said, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" Some different translations say, "Do you still have no faith in me? Do you still not trust me? Why are you so afraid? I am with you." Jesus, he's saying, "I am with you. Do you still have no trust that I am with you?" And they were filled with a great fear. Now, this type of fear was not so much of a fear of being afraid. In the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, the book of Proverbs tells us the beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. And there's this different kind of fear, that says, "I respect you. I understand your authority. I understand who you are, and I give you the respect and the admiration and the honor you deserve." This is the kind of fear now they had. So their fear went from being legitimately scared of what could happen. Their mind is reeling on all these different things that could take place. Their fear changed from being afraid to now being in honor and respect and admiration of who Jesus is. And he says they were filled with this fear, they were filled with this respect and this admiration, and said to one another, then they started questioning, "Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And so now they get this snippet, they get this quick snapshot, and they get a quick understanding that Jesus is more than just a man. Jesus is more than just a rabbi. If Jesus has control over what? The weather? Who created the weather? Who created the winds and the rains? These disciples were born and raised with an understanding and a teaching, just like you guys were, that God created the wind and the rain and the mountains and the lakes and the hailstorms, the snow, the sun, the stars. God created all this. So if Jesus has control and can control and command the wind and the rains and the waves, Jesus is more than just a rabbi and just a teacher. Jesus is God. Because only the Creator can command his creation. This is why our memory verse today is so powerful in a time like this where people are legitimately scared of a possible sickness, of what's going on. Some parents might be afraid of what's going on with jobs. People are afraid of different scenarios. When was there a time that you were afraid? Was there ever a time that you were afraid of something? What was that? How did that make you feel? What were you afraid of? What was your mind thinking when you were going through that moment where you were afraid? What could happen? There's times where we have fear. And it's okay to be afraid to the point where you start where are you going to start putting your trust? A lot of people are putting their trust in jobs. Will money save my family? Will jobs save my family? Will having more protection, such as dogs around the house, protect my house from bad guys? We put our trust in these things, and sometimes they fail us. This is where our memory verse today says, present your requests to God, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Because just like the disciples experienced in this scenario on the lake with Jesus, and a storm is raging around them, the boat feels like it's getting ready to capsize, they're afraid they're going to sink, they're afraid they're going to drown in this boat and crash. And yet Jesus comes in and rebukes the scenario. He rebukes the wind and rebukes the sea. And what does he say? Peace. Be still. Oftentimes, guys, we just need to remember that So one of the simplest things we can do when we're afraid is to be peaceful and still and give those things to God. Give those emotions to God. Pray, God, I'm dealing with some tough emotions right now. I'm dealing with a heartache. I'm dealing with a sickness. I'm dealing with pain of some sort. I got injured. All throughout our lives, we're going to deal with different emotions and different fears and different struggles. And Jesus reminds the disciples, why are you afraid? I'm with you the whole time. Do you still have no faith in me? I'm here. I'm right here with you. Peace. Be still. It's okay. I'm here. As we go throughout our week and as we go throughout our time, guys, this type of memory verse, this type of passage reminds us that when we give those prayers to God, that peace of God in our hearts and our mind, knowing that Jesus is with us, knowing that Jesus will be our protection, will be our provider, will be our healer, will be our guiding wisdom, those things should bring us peace and calm. So take a second, guys, read that story with your moms and dads, and start asking some of those questions of yourself. When was there a time that you were afraid? When was there a time when you were afraid? What emotion did you associate with that fear as well? Were you sad? Were you angry about something? Were you bitter about something? So it's not just about fear. Jesus can help us deal with a whole range of emotions. How did you handle it? What did you do? Do you think you handled it in a mature way, a right way, a healthy way? Or did you handle it in maybe not so good a way? You stomped off and you pouted, or you threw a fit, or you threw stuff across the room and made it miserable for everybody else around you. How did you handle your emotions? Walk yourself through those questions with mom and dad. You can read that story again with Jesus and read maybe some of the parables before if you want to. But this story about Jesus calming the wind and the waves with the disciples, ask yourselves, is there a time where I'm afraid? And what can I do next time that I'm afraid to help get myself through that? What kind of prayer, what kind of actions could I do to remind myself that Jesus is with me, Jesus will protect me, provide for me, and heal me? When was there a time that I can remember, what can I do to remind myself that Jesus' peace and calm is with me always? Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Check out the following videos for following weeks if we continue to have these lessons online. You can check here again, parents, the resources for this lesson, again, 1st grade through 4th grade, are right next to the video on the church's website. The links will be there. If you can't, in fact, print them off, I've been told that Jessica is more than willing to print those off here at the church and have those packets ready for you to pick up and go through those. So if you're seeing this video and you want to do the video with the handouts with your kids, you can set that up and watch the video whenever you want, watch the lesson whenever you want after you get the handouts. But all those resources are right there on the website next to this video online, on the church's website. A closing benediction I have for you guys. Go throughout this week praying and knowing with confidence that Jesus is with you. He will always be with you, and he will bring you peace and calm in the scenarios that you think peace and calm can't be. Have a great week, guys.